to talk you through all this. Two, hello. Oh. I know I can drink the full-size monsters. I was at the dollar store earlier, and they just had these little guys. I don't know. It's kind of nice. Oh, that is the spot. Crackety Kraken, thank you for gifting a sub 6 minutes ago. I appreciate that. Thank you, Crackety Kraken. Robeless Rob is eating is eating bugs. I'll become a robe guy. Just you wait. Just you wait. I should put a robe in my Amazon wish list. I'm sure one of you freaks would buy me a robe. I have no doubt that one of the weirdos in this community would purchase a robe if I agreed to wear it on here. I could do it. Do they have robes on Amazon? Men's robe. They got a lot of like bathrobe types. Not a lot of the cool kind that I want though, so far. This one's all right. And what is a bug lunch? Is that just like a salad? What is a bug lunch? I can show you what the lunch is if you're interested in looking at it. This one's all right. I kind of like this. Oh, it comes with shorts as well. Oh, they got a couple of different ones. Okay, these are pretty cool. They got a couple different ones. The dragon one is good. Shrimp is bugs. Oh yeah, then it is a bug lunch, yes. No, I'm not looking. The thing is, I have a Jeff Lebowski style robe. I have like a plaid fuzzy robe, Squatch. What I want is one of these like luxurious robe guy robes. Go back to the ravishing Rob, Daves. That's right. What do you think of this one? Do I want one with the dragons? This kind of like pattern. I don't know what this pattern would be called. There's a couple options. This red one with the dragons is pretty cool. A wealthy widow robe. I think that's what I'm going for. Fuzzy plaid robe is luxury. Well, that's true, but it's also less of a summer thing. Like when it's hot, you don't want to be wearing a big, warm, like fuzzy robe, right? You want one of these, one that breathes. You want it to breathe. Oh, wow. That is maybe... Misters of Insanity, that is maybe overboard. That's maybe overboard in the robe lifestyle. I don't know if I could pull that off. That's very like Ric Flair. One of these bad boys. I bet it's comfy though. I bet it's very comfy. I'm leaning towards this with the dragons on it. I'm leaning towards this dragon robe so far. What do we think? There's different poses too. This could be me. You could be looking at me in one of these bad boys. Get one with jaguars. They don't seem to have one though. I mean, maybe there are more. It's on there. I wanted one with like pineapples. Like pineapples would be good. Something like funky like that. Again, this is more of a... Ooh, it's a satin. Okay. It's not... I wanted more of the knee length. You know what I mean? Rob wants a pineapple one because he's in the lifestyle. What's the lifestyle? What's the lifestyle? These ones are funky. This is too long though. I want above the knee. I'm looking at above the knee length. Rob's in proud bachelor era. We're here to encourage. You don't want to see what happens if you disparage. True. This is my lifestyle now. It's true. This is what I'm about. Oh, that's nice. See, this is like something if this was knee length. This kind of tropical situation. Robin Brian Quimby, known swingers. That's right. Yes. You could just hem it. That's true. It says it's satin. If you want a tree length tropical, just get an XXL Hawaiian shirt. There we go. That would be sexy. Got to go full silk. See, I need around. This is the thing. I need around this length. My quest to become a robe guy continues. I don't know. I'll go back to look at it later. I'll go back to look at it later. There is a robe on my wish list, though. There is a robe on my Amazon wish list now. So if anyone feels like purchasing me a robe, if you want to buy a robe for the 40-year-old Canadian man that you like to watch on your phone sometimes, you can do that. You can do that. I'm not telling anyone what to do. And my mom corrected me, isn't he Quebecois? Why are you saying Rob Rousseau in Danish and I have no excuses? I'm not Quebecois. I'm a audit anglais. I'm an anglophone Quebecer. So I don't know how that changes. Like what? The Danish version. We love our 40-year-old Canadian phone man. Hell yeah. And I love being your 40-year-old Canadian phone man. I like living in your phone. I'm happy here. I have my little area. I like to live in your phone. I'm on the 65-inch TV in my living room. Oh my god. Just sucking down shrimp. Sucking down shrimp. This is the future of entertainment. The 40-year-old Canadian man sucking down shrimp on my gigantic TV. Or living in your pockets. Exactly. I'm just a little guy. I'm just a little guy living in your pocket. I'm living in your pocket. I'm on your phone. I'm on your laptop. Or I'm on your gigantic fucking TV. And you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. I got this last night. Like, what do you call this? Is it poke? I've always been too embarrassed to ask this question. Some shrimp sucking leftist in Canada. That's what they're calling me. Is it called poke? Or is it like poke or something? I've always been too weirded out to ask this. It is poke. Okay. There we go. I'm glad I asked. I kind of thought it was poke, but I didn't know. Poke like the mon. Anyway, I got this last night. I didn't love it last night, but I got this meal from a new place because it had a 2-for-1 offer. I didn't really look at the ingredients before I got it. A little too much iceberg lettuce for my liking. There's like shrimp and vegetables and sushi rice and spicy sauce and avocado, but there's a bunch of iceberg lettuce in there. And like iceberg lettuce, like I don't know what's the purpose of putting that in anything? No. It's rarely like adding anything to whatever meal. So I didn't love it last night, but I feel like after sitting in my fridge for the night, it's actually better. I wonder if someone walking by Squatch Drew's house can see the fake Quebecois man on the 65-inch. This guy must be important. Look at this guy. Look at how big he is. I like chewing on water sometimes. I don't know. It's just like I wasn't into the iceberg lettuce last night, but like I said, after being in my fridge all night, it's pretty good. Pretty nice. And we got to talk about this because we got into it a bit yesterday, but after talking about it, I did watch Zulu again last night. I watched Zulu. I'd seen it once before, but I watched Zulu again. And I got to say, I really love Zulu. It's so fucking good. It really is. And I have an analysis of it that I think is important to talk about. Because watching it the second time last night, I think Zulu is actually more anti-colonial than it lets on. I think my initial stance was like, it's not really anti-colonial, but it's pretty, for the 60s, like it's pretty good. It's like, it's not just this like kind of bullshit sort of rehabilitate British Empire propaganda rehabilitation. It's a little more nuanced. It's a little more nuanced than that. But after watching it last night, I really think it's actually more anti-colonial than I let on. I want to talk about why. What was the name of the other Zulu versus England movie we watched on the stream? That's Zulu Dawn. Zulu Dawn was the sequel. But like Zulu Dawn is cool, but it's just so.
You can count on me.
It looks better. Like Zulu Dawn, I think was maybe it had a big production with all kinds of
6 months away. TRRS Sankara.
All kind of big battle scenes and stuff, but it's kind of lower budget. It doesn't look quite as nice. Zulu looks fantastic. Just the photography in it, the landscapes, the sets. It's shot on location. You got thousands of extras running around. It's just like, we got into this a little bit yesterday, but it's just, you watch it and it's just like, holy shit. Like, it's really true that they do not make stuff like that anymore at all. Ben Bang Boom, thanks for the 30 months. 30 months of Tier 1, 6 months away from a very special little treat. Anyway, I talked yesterday about Zulu and the kind of conflicting emotions that it brings out in you when you watch it, because it's like you can't help but root for the underdog in any kind of situation. When you strip away all the historic context, you see this like setup, and it's 100 guys versus 4,000 people, a gigantic army, and they're struggling and they're surviving, and it's hard not to root for them. And I was talking yesterday, they start singing Men of Harlech, and it's like, God damn, you start getting goosebumps, and you're like, no, I hate the British Empire, I hate colonialism. But you can't help but sympathize with these characters and what they're experiencing, and seeing like the bravery that they're exhibiting. All that historical context is stripped away. And here's what I really noticed. Here's what I really noticed last night, Bleep Lord. So in the final, I don't want to spoil this. I mean, it's something that happened in the 1870s or whatever. So I can't really spoil something that isn't on the historical record. But like in the final assault, there's this whole night-long siege that these fucking guys are trying to struggle against. And then there's this final assault on the last day. That's when they sing Men of Harlech, and there's the last like wave coming in to really finish them off. And they pull this very tricky maneuver, and they lure in the Zulus, and then guys that were hidden pop up, and they have this like little tight firing circle, and they repel this final wave, and then the Zulus take off again. And then hours later they show up again, and they show up to just say goodbye. Basically, they show up again and they sing a little song, and they're kind of just like, all right, you guys are all right. We'll see you later. Well fought, well done. But here's the thing though, because when this final battle is happening, and again, it's rousing, and it's exciting and thrilling, and you're going to see whether they survive or they get butchered. And they survive, and then they stop firing, and the camera really pans over, like takes time to pan over these like mounds of bodies, basically. These mounds of bodies, and it's not triumphant. Like it horrifies you as the viewer, especially as someone coming from the future with that criticism of colonialism. And you see these mounds of bodies and these white colonial soldiers like holding the guns. And it's not done in this triumphant way. It's actually horrifying. It's like you see that, and you feel this like guilt, because it's like, oh my God, I was just rooting for these people, and like look what I've been like rooting for. The camera really lingers on these bodies, and it's really awful. Like it's an awful image, and it's not like there's these big triumphant score playing or anything like that. It's like, it's not meant to make you, meant to make you question that feeling that you had. And then there's this conversation with Michael Caine's character, Lieutenant Bromhead, and Michael Caine is just so great in this movie. He's this arrogant prick. He's just, it was his first movie, and it launched his whole career because he's so great in it. And and there's a whole class dynamic with this other guy, Chard, who takes command because he has like 1 month of seniority, and he's this like working class guy from the engineer corps that takes command over this like rich, entitled like nepotism case, Michael Caine. But then, so they have this conversation like after this big wave happens, after this big wave attack that they repel, and he's talking about, does it always feel like this? He's like, I feel sick, and he's like, I feel something else, and it lingers on him for a minute. He says, I feel ashamed. Yeah, it's like middle class versus aristocracy. But that's it. He says, I feel ashamed. And I think that's supposed to like mirror the viewer. Because like you, as the viewer, you feel that shame. You feel that shame that you're like, you got caught up in this kind of like spectacle. And it lingers on these mounds of corpses of all the Zulus. And you feel this like disgust with yourself. You feel this like shame. Because you see, even there's this power dynamic where it's like a small group of colonial soldiers versus this wave of the waves of natives. It's their land, and it's the colonizer. They're the aliens. They're the occupiers. They're the exploiters. They're the murderers, and the people that are attacking them are these like brave and noble people that are defending their land defending their homes from these monsters, these alien monsters who are trying to exploit their land and their resources, just like they exploited India and they exploited the entire world with all these colonies around the world. And so I think there's a real comment on that when it lingers on these bodies. There's also a final shot of Char just like standing there and just in this like sea of corpses, and it's really not meant to be this triumphant moment. And I think you as the viewer are watching it and you feel disgusted with yourself and you feel ashamed with yourself. And then I think that was really confirmed when the characters on the screen kind of articulate this idea. I feel ashamed, because I felt the same way. I was like, I feel ashamed. I feel ashamed that I've been cheering for these guys. I feel ashamed that I empathize with these people. You know? I should be empathizing with the Zulus. You know, it's their home. It's just a fantastic movie, honestly. It looks so great. Michael Caine is fantastic. The main actor, I can't remember his name. He's great. The dynamic with the two of them is really good. Again, just the landscapes and the sets. We're talking about Zulu with Michael Caine. That's right. The landscapes and the sets, they have these amazing, amazing shots of these guys like staring out at the hills, and you just see like these dots of like human beings, like hundreds or thousands of people just kind of appearing silently on the hillside. And it's so cool. And you have Michael Caine and the other guy with just these legendary, we're totally fucked faces, just looking at like how screwed they are as they see these silent armies like approaching over the hill. It's honestly so fantastic. Maybe I'm just really entering my dad era, and that's partially true. I am like really exploring the dad canon right now with The Great Escape and Bridge Too Far and now Zulu. But God, Zulu is fucking good. It's really just a fantastic movie. I gave it 5 stars on Letterboxd. Love Michael Caine in this movie is so great. He's such a bastard. He is such a bastard. And he plays it so perfectly. Anyway, that's why that was my upon my second viewing, I really did get the impression that it's more anti-colonial than it lets on. I think this whole idea of sympathizing with the occupier and the colonizer is very intentional. And I think it subverts that. It takes those feelings, it gives you that feeling of like, yeah, I hope they pull this out. You know, hell yeah, grab the Union Jack. The sun never sets on the British Empire. It kind of makes you feel that emotion, and then it shames you. It shames you deliberately for feeling that. And in case I thought it was an accident, then the characters actually really like articulate that very idea. I think that's really interesting. Anyway, really recommend watching this movie. It's just so great. That's what I feel The Wire always did well at, despite some tone-deaf cop apologia along the way. I feel like The Wire has aged badly just because of David Simon. Like, just seems like kind of a liberal dipshit. Twitter is really unfortunate in that respect. Sometimes it like gets these very talented, creative people to like Stephen King is another example, to talk about their political views, and you're just like, man, this guy sucks. I watched Iron Claw the other day. I knew nothing about their story. Thought it had some good performances, but felt like they cut things, so some parts were confusing. I agreed with that. I think I wanted to like Iron Claw more than I actually did. It did have some very nice performances, but I do think that like it, in the interest of creating a more cohesive movie narrative, it kind of like sped up through some things that didn't really work for me as much, even though I did enjoy it overall. Those brothers did love each other. There's something really beautiful about that. I used to be a brother. Now I'm not anymore. Cross of Iron, Peckinpah's movie with James Coburn where Nazis are in a bunker is a great example of the sympathizing so as to the point of the folly of war in general. That's on my list as well. That's on my list. I downloaded a bunch of these old dad war movies. If we wanted, though, to do, I don't know if people are interested in this, if we did want to do a Zulu viewing, I would watch it again if we wanted to do a Zulu movie night, because I do think it's like really worth watching and worth discussing. I'm like Dr. Dad war movie. That's great. Sorry, there's some street cleaning going on right outside my window. It's very loud. Very loud. It's going to be over in just a moment. Very loud street cleaning. But yeah, it's funny because then in Zulu Dawn, I think Zulu Dawn tries to do the opposite. That's the funny thing is I think Zulu Dawn makes you cheer for the destruction and the massacre of the British troops, and then tries to shame you for liking that. But it's like then I didn't feel the shame, and then I didn't feel ashamed. I just unapologetically enjoyed watching them get absolutely wrecked. So it's not quite as effective, you know. It tries to pull the inverse. Oh, you want to see all these British troops get massacred, do you? Well, how about this? Look how horrible it is. And then you watch it and it's like, no, that's pretty cool. I don't really mind. You know? They really shouldn't have been there. Well, that's good. That's good stuff. Anyway, that's what I did last night. I ate my poke. I watched Zulu. I took a time out from Zulu to watch the Pacers and Celtics game, which was a really bad choke by the Pacers. They had that game won on like 3 separate occasions and really fucked up. And those are tough. When you're trying to win 4 games and you let the game 1 on the other guy's court slip away like that, that's hard. That's very demoralizing. They have multiple out of bounds turnovers. I think there's like 3 key ones. They should have been at home in Birmingham and Liverpool, and you wouldn't have been in the way of Zulu Spears. I agree. That's what I mean. I totally agree. Okay. Yeah, when Brown made that 3. And I jinxed it in the Discord as well, didn't I? As soon as I thought it was over, I gave it a lol Celtics in the Discord and I fucked it up. I screwed everything up. I did jinx it hard. I thought it was safe. I thought it was safe for a lol Celtics. It was like the end of History of Violence. How do you fuck that up? You fool! And William Hurt at the end of History of Violence. What an all-time great cameo. He's like... I watched that the other night as well. And it's just every time. It's so great. How do you fuck that up? Oh, Sean, you got to see History of Violence. You got to see it. Hey, bro, him. History of Violence is a must-watch. It's really good. And the screenwriter, Josh Olson, is a really cool dude. There's not a naked fight scene in that. No, that's Eastern Promises. There's a naked fight scene in that. Also, fun fact, the very last film to be put on VHS. I did not know that. I was not aware of that. Viggo and Cronenberg are great. Eastern Promises is another good one. Viggo Mortensen is fantastic. I mean, Eastern Promises I've seen less. I have seen it once, but not for a while. But Mortensen is just fantastic in History of Violence. It's so like subtle and subdued, but he does so many little cool things to bring that character to life. There's this moment at the end when he goes to Philly and he sits down at this dive bar in Philly, and his accent and his posture and his voice changes like ever so slightly, and it's so fascinating. Viggo hosted a cool live reading of John Brown's courtroom speech and a few other speeches from the Zinn collection. Oh, that's cool. Seems like a cool guy. Okay, George Smiley, I'm going to write down these movies. I've never seen Paths of Glory either, despite being a pretty big Kubrick head. Never seen that one. I'll check these ones out. I'd like to do Platoon again as well. Zulu, though, seriously. I'm sorry to keep going on about it, but...
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Anon, thank you for the gifted sub. Thank you. Very cool. I had seen Zulu before, and I had gone down a weird Zulu obsession before. I had watched it, but watching it last night really, like, a lot of things really clicked into place for what it's trying to say and what it's trying to accomplish. Yeah, no, Pelicans, we were watching parts of Zulu Dawn yesterday, actually. Do you have a Letterboxd page? Yes, I do. I am on Letterboxd. I need to write reviews, though, I'm trying to review everything. I can't always do it. I'm trying to get more into it. But I do need to do reviews for Great Escape, Bridge Too Far, and Zulu. Here I am on Letterboxd. There we go. Dirty Dozen, a good one too. I got that on the queue. I got that one coming up. Ones I have coming up to watch are you just doing World War II war movies? Not necessarily, because Zulu is not World War II. That's primarily what I've been looking at. But I did Zulu, You know, I'm open to some Vietnam movies. I'm open to some different things. I watched Deer Hunter a few weeks ago as well. What I got coming up is Dirty Dozen, Cross of Iron, Where Eagles Dare. Those are the 3 that I have coming up next to watch. I should open up my Plex server so people can see my Plex stuff. I did watch Battle of Algiers a few months, basically as soon as October 7th happened. Jeremiah Johnson. I've never seen that one. I'm gonna put that on the list too, though. I'm putting that on the list as well. Joe Dirt. Also a classic. Great Robert Redford movie. Robert Redford in the 70s was just insanely hot. It's just ridiculous. Like he shows up in A Bridge Too Far as well. Man. I watched The Sting a few months ago, yeah. I watched The Sting and I watched Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. That was really good. His hair was a 10, even if it was a 9.5. Yeah, he was fantastic. OG Himbo. Yeah, the Sting is very fun.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Resub day. I hope everyone had a great long weekend.
Thank you, Envy Adams. Thanks for the 20 months of Tier 1. I hope you had a nice long weekend as well. I did have a nice long weekend. I absolutely did. I also had a nice morning. I got up this morning and went out for a nice coffee. There's so many Korean restaurants in my neighborhood, and there's this one like coffee shop that's like, it's like Korean fusion coffee shop. And I got a iced latte and a little fruit bowl from there. Fantastic. What a nice way to start the day. Weather here was brutal for the long weekend. It's very hot right now. In fact, I got to turn on my... It was funny. It was last night too. It looked like there was this massive thunderstorm descending. And it just never really... I kind of got like thunderstorm blue balls. I kind of thought it was coming and it just never really happened. Which was disappointing because I really liked thunderstorm. What am I supposed to do with these clouds? I know. Here, just folks, just talk to the chair for 1 second. I'm just gonna go put my poke back in the fridge and use cloud etching. That's right. I'm gonna put my poke back in the fridge and turn on the fan and get something else to drink, some water or something. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Okay, I'm back. I somehow got more viewers. When it was just the chair. I should just do a whole chair stream one day. What about that? The chair's our new overlord. It's like the Ken Brockman thing. Hail chair. We love the chair. First time watcher here, just followed for your chair. Okay, well, excuse me. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Please, continue.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Is that what people want? Is that what people want from me? Really? Evidently, yes. Bleep Lord, even though it shouldn't even be, it should be the chair that's thanking for people. Bleep Lord, thank you for gifting a sub. Jay, thank you for gifting a sub. And Squatch, thank you for gifting 5 subs. To the blank dead air with the chair. Thank you, everyone. Message received loud and clear. Message received loud and clear. Apparently you don't want me on the show. I get it. You know, whatever. You think you can hurt me by choosing the chair over me? Well, you can't. All right? You can't. They're about to get some close-ups of the chair. There is a closed hype train too, folks. So if you want to make it up to me and make me feel better about choosing the chair over me, now I'm here. Now there's like a human being that's speaking with you and engaging with you. Wouldn't that be a way to show me that it's actually me that you tune in for? And not subtly sending me a message that you want me to leave?
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Flipcoin, thank you for the 100 bits. When chair isn't on the screen, people should be saying, where's the chair? I want to see more chair. The chair, though. Who put this meat bag on there? Oh, to be a chair. Cool shorts and mullet. Thank you. It's hot today, but it's short season now, so that's nice. So, folks, before we're going to talk about the actual news soon. Yesterday, we went the whole day without really doing that at all. But while this hype train is going on, please support the show if you can. I mean, if you really want me to leave and just you're going to subscribe to the chair, I can do that too.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Pezzy, thank you for the 100 bits. Dr. Maggot, thank you for the gifted sub. Thank you for that.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
That's all right, George. Does the chair also have tiny shorts for tiny shorts season? Eames, fetishist, and non-gifters would
We
wild
simply
out.
use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Chair, 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 chair. We want chair.
Thank you, Bleep Lord, for the 200 bits. Thank you. All right. You want the chair? Fucking take the chair. Okay, whatever. I don't mind.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
There you go. There you go.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Chair's getting some haters as well. Red Wizard. Wow. Divisive. Very divisive.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
CHAIR.
One minute left in the hype train, folks. We got 1 minute left. So please subscribe if you can. Subscribe or gift subs or bits to support the show and the chair, and get tiny little images from Twitch for the hype train. That's cool. Chairman gets paid.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Okay. I can't keep doing this bit all day. I can't keep doing this bit all day. I'm so sorry. Oh. Bleep Lord, thanks for the 200 bits. Pete Cicada, thanks for the 100 bits. Bleep Lord, thanks for the 100 bits again. Mistress of Insanity, thank you for 200 bits. Diego, thank you for a gifted sub. George Smiley, thanks for the 100 bits. Crystal, thank you for the gifted sub as well. Goodness. You people are outrageous. Chair stream now featuring Rob. There we go. Oh, okay. Okay, well, I think we should talk about this. Are we finished now? Are we finished with this? Are we finished with this now? Okay, should we talk about serious matters now? Slub to chair. Jeez. What a silly community. If we're all done being silly now, maybe we can start talking about some real shit. Mainly what I want to talk about right now, like, and for everyone that was talking about this, like, ICC situation where the ICC is, like, applying for these arrest warrants for Netanyahu, and people were spinning it as being, like, people were very cynically, you know, and I understand the cynicism, to be clear. Like, I really do. But spinning it as, like, you know, that it doesn't matter, it's not important. I would argue that the reaction that we're seeing from not only people in Israel, but world leaders around the world indicate that it is a big deal. Regardless of whether it's going to have these major consequences. It's so revealing just by paying attention to what people are saying about this. And the world leaders are losing their minds. They're all going from the same talking points. People are totally freaking out over it. Like in America, you've got this bipartisan. It's like a bipartisan push to like talk about sanctioning the ICC. And remember, we talked about this on Monday. What did Hamas say? When Hamas was accused of crimes just as Israel was, what did Hamas say? Okay, let's have an investigation then. Let's have an investigation. What's everyone else saying? We're going to sanction the ICC. We're going to invade The Hague. We're going to nuke the Dutch. Like that's what Israel and their supporters and their allies are saying. Versus Hamas, the evil, scary terrorist guys are like, okay, let's have an investigation then. Germany just said they support the ICC on this. I said France did as well. Like when fucking France is when you're making France look progressive, like you've really gone down a dark path, I feel like. So let's look at this. And this is amazing too, like just looking at the CBC coverage. Of course, who does power and politics go to when you want to bring someone on CBC, even-handed liberal CBC, to talk about this historic moment where Israel is applying for these arrest warrants against Netanyahu? Well, let's bring on the Israel ambassador. Let's bring on the Israeli ambassador to Power and Politics to talk about why the ICC is Hamas. So let's look at some of these reactions. And here's Lindsey Graham as well.
Tried to come after our soldiers.
And like this comment from Lindsey Graham is amazing too, because it's like, he's saying this as if it's a bad thing, but it's like, what's the problem? What's the problem, sir?
So we, hopefully, together will find a way to rest our displeasure with the ICC, because if they'll do this to Israel, we're next. This group tried to come after our soldiers. Yeah, you can clap all you want to.
I am clapping.
They tried to come after our soldiers in Afghanistan, but reason prevailed. So at the end of the day here, what I hope to happen is that we level sanctions against the ICC for this outrage to not only help our friends in Israel, but protect ourselves over time. Mr. Secretary, your statement yesterday was excellent. The president's statement was excellent.
And look who's
Senator
praising.
Schumer's statement on the floor was excellent.
Praising Joe Brandon, praising Chuck Schumer. It's so weird. You're going into this election in the United States, the most important election of your lifetimes. We got to stop the bad guys from taking power again. And you see on this, they're totally in agreement. They raked Brandon through the coals for even having a mild criticism the other day and suggesting they might pause some kind of weapons shipment, which of course did not happen. And now they're all right back on the same page. You got Lindsey Graham saying, great speech, Mr. President. Great speech, Mr. Schumer. Full agreement. And like, these are the people that Americans are supposed to say, like, no, we got to get these guys out of there. We got to make sure they're not in there because bad things might happen. Meanwhile, they're totally in 100% agreement with one another.
About the outrage here. They have destroyed the notion of complementarity. They have misled people in the United States Senate about their intention, and they shall and will pay a price. Mr. Secretary, I appreciate what you've said. It is now time for us to act. Thank you. So we, hopefully, together will find a way to register our displeasure with the ICC, because if they'll do this to Israel, we're next. This group tried to come after our soldiers.
We respect the UN, but so they don't. Like all these institutions, the UN, the ICC, and they've said this in no uncertain terms. They've said this. They said this to the ICC prosecutor. They said this institution exists to go after like Africa and maybe sometimes Putin, and that's all. That's what it's there for. And they've said this in no uncertain terms.
We call on the nations of the civilized free world, nations who despise terrorists and anyone who supports them, to stand by Israel. You should outright condemn this step, like the US did, UK, Germany, Italy, and the Czech Republic, for instance. Make sure the ICC understands where you stand. Oppose the prosecutor's decision and declare that even if warrants are issued, you do not intend to enforce them. Because this is not about our leaders. It's about our survival as the nation of Israel. Jews, Christians, and Muslims who refuse to die in the hands of terrorists.
Obviously, the International Criminal Court is...
Sorry, folks. I'm sending an email at the same time. I'm going to start this over. I apologize. The chair doesn't have arms. The chair can't control the scenes, okay? That's me. That's me that does that.
We call on the nations of the civilized free world, nations who despise terrorists and anyone who supports them, to stand by Israel. You should outright condemn this step, like the US did, UK, Germany, Italy, and the Czech Republic, for instance. Make sure the ICC understands where you stand. Oppose the prosecutor's decision and declare that even if warrants are issued, you do not intend to enforce them. Because this is not about our leaders. It's about our survival as the nation of Israel. Jews, Christians, and Muslims who refuse to die in the hands of terrorists.
Obviously, the International Criminal Court is independent.
Look at him in front of this like bullshit corporate graffiti installation. Jesus Christ.
The hands of terrorists.
Obviously, the International Criminal Court is independent in its work, and I've said from the very beginning how important it is that everyone respect and abide by international law. What I will say is troubling, though, is the sense of an equivalency between the democratically elected leaders of Israel
we gotta stop
and
this.
the bloodthirsty terrorists that lead up Hamas.
We gotta stop this. Again, no, there's not an equivalence. We can't make an equivalence. We can't make an equivalence between Israel and Hamas, the bloodthirsty terrorists, as he calls them. Who's more bloodthirsty? Who has killed more people? Who's committed more acts of violence? Who's killed more children? Who has tortured more people? Who has taken more hostages? Who has committed more acts of depraved, violent terror than Israel? Between Israel and Hamas. Israel, it's not even close. It's not even close. And this whole thing, the democratically elected Israel, well, it's not a democracy. They're occupying land that doesn't belong to them. And there's people that aren't included in their democratic process. So if these people don't have a state, then it's not a democracy. And Israel's preventing them from having a state. So no, it's not a democracy. They're not democratically elected, even though Hamas in the elections in Gaza in 2008 were elected. But we got to, like, this is the talking point, right? We can't make an equivalence. Oh, no. We can't make an equivalence between Israel and Hamas. And again, once again, I agree with that. We shouldn't make an equivalence because there is no equivalence in terms of who's more violent and depraved. There's no equivalence whatsoever. But this is the talking point. You'll see leader after leader, politician after politician, they're all saying this, like almost word for word with one another.
I don't think that's helpful.
I don't believe for one moment that seeking these warrants is going to help get the hostages out, it's not going to help get aid in, and it's not going to help deliver a sustainable ceasefire.
I hate that as
and as we've
Alex.
said from the outset, because Israel is not a signatory to the Rome Statute, and because Palestine is not yet recognised as a state, we don't think that the court has jurisdiction in this area. But I would go beyond that and say, frankly, I think this is mistaken in terms of position, in terms of timing, in terms of effect. To draw moral equivalence between the Hamas leadership and the democratically elected leader of Israel, I think is just plain wrong.
Jest rzeczą zupełnie oczywistą, że mamy do czynienia z nieakceptowalnym takim symetryzmem politycznym.
What do you know, Poland is
No,
against it as
powstaje
well.
dramatyczne pytanie, dlaczego nikt nie uznał wcześniej.
It poses a dramatic question of why no one thought of issuing arrest warrants to Hamas leaders, which they literally did do. I mean, and even we've criticized that. Like, I don't think they should have done that, but they did. But you see how even though they try to be even-handed, that doesn't like count for any of these people.
Zanim wybuchła wojna w Gazie, aby wystosować nakaz aresztowania, jeśli chodzi o liderów Hamasu, organizacji terrorystycznej. Zrównywanie, ja nie jestem fanem premiera Netanyahu, znam go bardzo długo, mogę powiedzieć, że na początku jego kariery
When someone was saying, oh, sorry, who was this a few moments ago? Let me just see if I can try and find it. A few moments ago, saying like cutting Netanyahu loose, and maybe that was in reference to like Germany and France coming down on the side of the ICC. I'm just trying to find the comment and I can't find it. But that's the interesting though, because like even if there's this element within the Biden administration or with any of these like Western leadership, people like folks, if they wanted to cut Netanyahu loose, and there has been some like indication of that, the kind of like frustration and all the kind of ways that like we keep getting these leaked stories about Biden, how they're sick of Netanyahu, and Democrats taking that line like, oh, this is Netanyahu's war, Netanyahu, and trying to make it about that, which is funny because there's an opportunity here to cut him loose if that's what they wanted to do, and they're not doing it. They're still standing by this fucking mass murdering psycho, even now when they have this opportunity to cut him loose, and they still can't do it. That's the amazing thing. And like, yeah, France is doing something different. Germany's doing something different, which is genuinely shocking. But even if there was any like frustration with the Western leaders like Biden or whoever else over Netanyahu, they have an opportunity to like cut him loose right now. And it's like, no, sticking with him, standing by him.
premierowskiej lata temu nawet się w jakimś sensie przyjaźniliśmy politycznie, ale ewolucja polityczna premiera Netanyahu każe mi być bardzo, bardzo sceptycznym wobec tego, co robi. Uważam, że jest osobą w dużej mierze współodpowiedzialną za kryzys, tą nową fazę kryzysu na Bliskim Wschodzie.
Det ser jeg selvfølgelig på med stor alvor. Vi anerkender jo ICC og står vagt om ICC's uafhængighed. Og derfor kan jeg jo ikke gøre andet og mere end at tage det til efterretning.
They probably don't have other things in place. Well, I mean, that's part of it, right? Is that like they might scapegoat Netanyahu, but ultimately I'm sure they realize that even if Netanyahu goes tomorrow, it's not like Israel's all of a sudden going to change its policy. It's because, as we know, the problem is not Netanyahu. The problem is like Israeli society. And Netanyahu is like an avatar of that. Even if he might be unpopular there for whatever reason, corruption or whatever reason, overall, you have a society that's in place that mostly agrees with the policy, the Gaza policy. And if Netanyahu was gone, you would have someone take his place tomorrow, whoever it was, who would continue that exact same policy. And I think most of our Western leaders know that. Global only showing negative reactions. Well, world leaders, that's right. The whole free world is weighed in. The free world is weighed in. All the different leaders. Everyone. Every single one of them. And they all agree. They're all in agreement that this is no good.
Vi har jo ikke for vane som tilhængere af retsstatsprincipper at diskutere med domstolen. Så det ser jeg på med stor alvor, og det tager vi til efterretning. Selvom det selvfølgelig forekommer mig lidt prekært, at der er en samtidighed, og at lederen af en demokratisk stat nævnes ligeværdigt med ledere af en terrororganisation. Men det rokker ikke ved det, der er min konklusion. Nemlig, at vi har respekt for ICC.
Leaders of a terrorist organization. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you can't make this equivalence between a democratically elected government and this terrorist group. Again, we've talked about this. Who calls Hamas a terrorist group? Are they just worldwide? Every single country around the world agrees on this designation? No. It's the United States and the United States allies that have proclaimed them to be a terrorist group. Not everyone around the world agrees on this. Like we've talked about, no matter what your personal feelings are about Hamas, no matter what your personal feelings are, they are a legitimate political organization with an armed wing that's currently fighting a occupying colonialist army right now, heavily armed, nuclear armed, backed by the most powerful governments and the whole military-industrial complex right at this very moment. But according to the United States, the United States has just arbitrarily declared them to be this terrorist organization. So then you can't have these kind of rulings. What? They're a terrorist organization. What? You can't have this equivalence. But again, we have got the United States, the greatest purveyor of terrorism in the world, but should be understood, right? The United States government, the greatest supporter and the greatest purveyor of terrorism that exists in the world today, has this ability to just arbitrarily decide which groups are legitimate and which are terrorist groups that don't have the same kind of rights in international institutions. You can't back them or say positive things about them wherever you live, because we've just decided. But this is an insane system where you have this global hegemon, the great Satan, the Fourth Reich, determining who is and who is not a terrorist group. Despite, even when you look at what terrorism is, the actual definition of the word, Israel has engaged in far more terrorism, intentionally killing civilians for political ends, intentionally targeting civilian infrastructure, bombing hospitals and schools and murdering journalists. That's terrorism. That's terrorism, no matter what designation you want to have about democratic legitimacy and all this bullshit.
Tager vi det her til efterretning og afventer, hvad der sker.
What I noted was that the prosecution is looking for arrest warrants for Hamas leaders and also Israel. And what we've said in Ireland is that we are just allow the court to take its process separate to the work of the prosecutor. He clearly has done an enormous body of work behind, to get to this point. And I note that he is taking decision on both sides of this conflict with Netanyahu and indeed in the Hamas leadership. But we support the independence of the court at all times and would just allow it to do its processes.
That's the one non-negative. Of course, Ireland comes through there at the end, who just recognized Palestine as a state today. But that's the one, even that not full-throated support, but that's the one non-negative. Look at this. Check this out. And this is catnip for anti-Semites and conspiracy theorists when you see this kind of shit. Look at this. Everyone gets the talking points. Everyone gets the talking points. And everyone starts chiming in about this false equivalence and the equivalency. Every single major US politician weighing in from both parties. From both parties. You got Fetterman in there, you got Adam Schiff, agreeing with these fucking psychos like Tom Cotton and Tim Scott. There's no equivalence. There's no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. The shameful attempt to create a moral equivalency between Hamas terrorists targeting civilians, etc. There's no moral equivalency. Fetterman requesting arrest warrants for both Israel and Hamas leaders suggests there's a moral equivalence between them. Adam Schiff, to make a false equivalence between the actions, etc. Washing Machine Schultz, there's no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Mark Wayne Mullen, there's no moral equivalence between Hamas and Israel. Greg Stanton, no moral equivalence. Tom Cotton, moral equivalence between Israel and Hamas is outrageous. Senator Bill Haggerty, an absurd moral equivalence. Tim Scott, zero moral equivalence between Hamas's terrorism. House Foreign Affairs Committee, drawing a false moral equivalency between democratically elected blah blah blah. Jake Auchincloss, implication of moral equivalence. Roger Wicker, there's no moral equivalence. John Boozman, no equivalence. You know what I mean? This is just this is what makes people get all kinds of fucked up ideas about who's pulling the strings in the United States government. Yeah, did ChatGPT write them? They might as well have. The talking point doesn't make sense, Nick, because there is no equivalence. Because Israel's committed, as I've talked about a number of times, Israel's committed far more acts of violence and terror than Hamas could ever hope to. McKinsey getting lazy with the marketing. Yeah, why not let the courts decide? No, they're all in agreement. They're all in agreement across party lines about this. Go after the ICC. How about that? And again, contrast that with the illegitimate terrorist organization of Hamas. What's their reaction to being accused of these war crimes? Okay, let's have an investigation. Let's have an investigation with evidence and examination and cross-examination, and we'll see who's guilty of war crimes in this investigation, and we'll abide by whatever the result is. It's weird, isn't it, how the democratic, legitimate state of Israel and the United States are taking this stance about the ICC, and these vicious, bloodthirsty terrorists are saying, okay, let's have an investigation. Does no one find that a little bit strange? If your stance is that Israel hasn't committed war crimes and Hamas has, you should welcome an investigation into that, right? If that's what you believe, that's not something I agree with, obviously. If that's what you believe, though, you should welcome to have an investigation. The talking points. The talking points went out. And look at this psychotic response from Netanyahu. Look at this guy. This is actually so fucking insane. This is the man that our governments just will refuse to cut ties from. Listen to what he says about this. Basically threatening the prosecutor. This genocidal, mass murdering gangster. He's basically going on TV in a response to being accused of war crimes. And he goes on TV and basically in mob boss language threatens the prosecutor that's bringing the charge. And he is from Philly, it's true.
Are you concerned about traveling in the wake of this arrest warrant? No, I'm not concerned about traveling. I'm not concerned at all about our status. I think that the prosecutor should be concerned about his status because he's really turning the ICC into a pariah institution. People are just not going to take it seriously. They see it as a politicized thing. I hope that the judges don't confirm what he says because that will make them into a kangaroo court.
Are you concerned about traveling?
Like, this is the guy that our Western leaders are just steadfastly standing by, even with all their private concerns that they have. It is just insane. Yeah, love just threatening the judge in my court case. And when Trump does that, liberal Biden supporters are like, oh, look at that Trump is at it again. And then when Biden supports this fucking monster and he does the exact same thing, they're kind of like, well, what can you do? What can you do? He's orange. This is a crazy post here as well. I don't know if people saw this. From Stop Anti-Semitism. Because we talked about Ireland, right? And Ireland just recognized Palestine as a state today. Stop Anti-Semitism say, meet Ireland's FM Michael Martin's family, which is super weird in and of itself. On October 7th, Hamas terrorists raped and kidnapped his daughter, Abby Martin. I'm saying Abby Martin. I'm trying to pronounce that kind of Irish name. Into Gaza. Today, FM Michael Martin announced he's rewarding his daughter's rapist with a state of their own. Lunacy, right? Then why are you doing this to Israel? And then they say in the follow-up post, this post is for illustrative purposes only and did not actually occur. Like, what the fuck? And yeah, basically, the guy that recognized Palestine in a state and showing a picture of his family and being like, your daughter is going to get raped. Like, what the fuck? It is insane, I know. Like, what the hell? They can pronounce it Albi? Yeah, I don't know. Just admitting that our posts are not connected to reality. And I mean, this whole thing about Hamas rapists, I mean, this is like, for the supporters of Israel, this is just a fact now. It's just a fact that mass rapes happen and that Hamas are just rapists and they walked around on October 7th just raping everybody, and they've been raping all the hostages. This is just like a fact for these people, even though zero evidence of that ever happening. And all the like supposed evidence and reporting that's been done on this is incredibly fucking flimsy. Zero actual physical evidence that any of that took place. Look at this thing we imagine might be a thing that could happen, and that's like the Zionist ideology pretty much in and of itself. No, they are obsessed with sexual violence. It's creepy. Like the same thing, like when you see like pro-Palestine supporters and you see these Zionists go up to them and go like, I hope you get raped. You see like, I see like Rania Khalek and Abby Martin will share emails they get from people after going on TV to talk about this. I hope you get raped. I can't wait till you go to Gaza and get raped. It's like, who fucking talks like that? You know what I mean? Like, I despise these supporters of Israel, the people that are continuing to support this and continuing to justify the mass murder. That's not, I would never, ever even think of talking to anyone like that. Like to my worst enemy, who are, I think they're depraved people, disgusting people. Why would you ever say that to someone? I hope you get raped. Like, what the fuck? It's so weird, this obsession with sexual violence that they have. Yeah, they do fetishize it. So let's watch this. This is going to be painful. This is CBC Power and Politics. And again, who do you bring on CBC Power and Politics to talk about this? Do you want to talk to any, like, Palestine activists or people from Gaza or any journalists that have been there or anyone that wants to talk about, like, someone that's maybe like a expert in international criminal law and the ICC? Maybe to bring on one of those people to talk about this. No, let's bring on the Israeli ambassador. That's who we should talk to. That's who we should talk to about this on the very neutral, liberal CBC Power and Politics.
Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court is seeking arrest warrants for some top Israeli and Hamas leaders. The proposed warrants are in connection with their actions in the war since the October 7th attacks. Among those named in the ICC request are Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The ICC Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan told CNN that his office requested the warrants based on evidence that suggests those named are responsible for war crimes.
Really dispelling that article about CBC bias. Yeah,
of course,
absolutely.
hostages have not been released. That insidious crime, it continues for so many innocent Israelis that are in custody. Are held hostage by Hamas and families that are waiting for their return. And of course, we see pictures of starving children, of emaciated children. We have a variety of evidence to support, not polemics, but evidence that's been forensically analysed to sustain the charge also of starvation being used by Netanyahu and Gallant as a method of war, and it's awful.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told MSNBC that the International
I literally
Criminal
choose
Court
Fox News over CBC now. Like, it's crazy. And look, that's the thing with, like, Piers Morgan. Like, I think Piers Morgan is detestable, an awful person. At least Piers Morgan is bringing on Abby Martin and Rania Khalek and Hassan, even as, like, the token crazy lefty. CBC doesn't even do that. They don't even bother with that. They don't even bring on anyone that's ever going to talk about this perspective at all, in any way. You get the Israeli ambassador. That's who you get in our fair and balanced Power and Politics interview. And I'm sure there's going to be some, like, tough questions that are asked here. That this guy is just going to instantly say October 7th, Hamas, mass rape. And that's all that's going to be the response.
request draws a false equivalency between Israel and Hamas.
It's a rogue prosecutor who's out to demonize the one and only Jewish state. And he's doing that by first applying a false symmetry. He's equating Israel's democratically elected leaders with the terrorist tyrants of Hamas. That's like saying, well, I'm issuing arrest warrants for, after 9/11, I'm issuing arrest warrants for George Bush, but also for Osama bin Laden. And in World War II, I'm issuing arrest warrants for FDR, but also for Hitler.
Israel and the United States are not members of the ICC and do not recognize its jurisdiction. However, most countries, 124 of them, including Canada, are parties to the court's treaty.
He was actually spitting there.
This means if the court issues arrest warrants, any country that is a member of the ICC would have to arrest them and extradite them to The Hague.
Obviously, the International Criminal Court is independent in its work, and I've said from the very beginning how important it is that everyone respect and abide by international
except not in this
law.
case, though.
What I will say is troubling, though, is the sense of an equivalency between the democratically elected leaders of Israel and the bloodthirsty terrorists that lead up Hamas.
There's the talking point.
For more on this, we're joined by Ido Moed. He is Israel's ambassador to Canada. Ambassador, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You heard there the Prime Minister. We heard it from the Foreign Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, that Canada rejected the equivalency between Israel and Hamas that your government says is implied in these charges. But they did not condemn this move by the ICC the way people like U.S. President Joe Biden have done. What do you make of Canada's response to this?
I think that Canada has made the right decision to condemn the fact that there is this outrageous moral equivalency between a democratically elected government and a hyenas terrorist organization. Hamas has set out to kill Israelis, as many as possible, to destroy Israel. We know Hamas's agenda, and the international community must act against Hamas. On the other hand, you have an Israeli government, a democratically elected government, a very robust legal system that works and has shown time and again that not only are we working against anybody who breaks the law within Israel, but in real time, under combat, we are able to apply international law as no other military has been able to do in the world until now. So in our actions, we have shown that we are applying international law, and this sort of libel that the prosecutor, the ICC prosecutor, is trying to present against Israel is outrageous, because it actually shows that the international law, the international system, law order-based system, is actually crumbling. If that is the case, if you equate a terrorist organization with the government, when we have full evidence to show that there is no starvation, I think that you remember from the first time that you and I spoke about how Israel applies international law, that we are doing our utmost to make sure that the civilians are staying out of harm's way in any way, shape, or form. That is, that's military harm, that's food, that's water, that's anything that can be provided for their security and safety.
Okay, there's a few things to go through there, but I want to start with the moral equivalency argument. Is it moral equivalency to hold people on opposite sides of a conflict accountable for their own individual actions, in the abstract way? I mean, if in fact, if you read the indictment or read the
this is what passes for the hard-hitting journalism. He's trying to ask some tough follow-up questions.
The prosecutor, he makes the point that there is starvation happening in Gaza, that they've been denied food, they've been denied water, and
we
he
looked
points
into
to
ourselves,
comments made by Mr. Gallant, the defense minister,
up.
who said he referred to Palestinians as human animals, saying we are fighting human animals and we will act accordingly. Is it moral equivalency to hold people accountable for their own actions?
So if you take a murderer and the victim, and the victim hits the murderer back, and the murderer is not able to kill the victim, would you hold both of them in the same balance? And you'll say, well, why did you hit your murderer? This is outrageous. This is using the same language that South Africa has been using in ICJ, to a sort of a blood libel against Israel, to blame us for protecting ourselves, for fighting back against Hamas terrorist organization that uses humans as the population as human shields. We've shown that time and again that this is what they're doing. We have shown how
the analogy would be the victim killing everyone of the murder's race in response. Yeah, and it also obscures the idea that the victim here are Palestinians. Israel is the murderer. Because history did not start on one day on October 7th. There's 70 years of occupation and colonization that took place before that. They're the murderer. They're not the victim.
And very meticulously and very slowly, so that we can retrieve our hostages, which, by the way, the prosecutor says they are held in custody by the Palestinians. I mean, just the choice of words showed that
multiple of their own
this person has an agenda against Israel.
Well, what would his agenda be? I mean, we've seen Karim Khan. He's gone after Putin for what's happened in Ukraine. Why do you assume there's an anti-Israeli agenda?
Ask him, why didn't he go after Maduro in Venezuela? Just a question. He met with him. Just asked him that.
What the fuck did Maduro
gentleman has some kind of an agenda which is against Israel. It's to pin this blind libel against us because he doesn't like Israel. He doesn't like Israel to exist. I don't know. I don't know what his agenda, but it's clearly he has an agenda, and that's evident. He's not been to Israel. He's not verified. Whatever he's stating, he has not been able to establish by himself. He's claiming he has proof. Israel has delivered 20,000 truckloads into Gaza, which amounts to 2 million tons of food supplies into the Gaza Strip. Israel has repaired the water.
It's blood libel. It's blood libel to accurately talk about the things that Israel says and does. When will people understand that? It's anti-Semitic blood libel when you just talk about the things that Israel does and you look at what their officials and the things that they say and you write it down. Yeah, they just have a little list. They have a bunch of anti-Semitic tropes. They have Hamas, October 7th. And it's just, that's the answer to everything. That ancient anti-Semitic trope of Jews bombing hospitals. Well, it's like, yeah, you're gonna use this anti-Semitic trope of Jews killing children. How shameful. 15,000 children have been killed in this conflict. Like, what the fuck? I feel if you don't think it's fair to be accused of murdering children, one thing you want to not do is murder 15,000 children in a 8-month span, and God knows how many more. There was a little kid killed in the West Bank yesterday shot by a sniper in the West Bank where there's no Hamas. Was just shot by a sniper riding his bike to school. Oh, but talking about that's this blood libel. That's this Nazi blood libel, talking about how Jewish people love to kill children. And no one believes that Jewish people love to kill children. That is blood libel. But it's an absolute fact that Israelis do seem to fucking love it. That's just the reality. You have a whole army that exists just to kill children. They're not even fighting Hamas. They're actually getting owned by Hamas every time they try to go into Gaza. The only thing they know how to do is kill children. And that's not Jewish people. That's Israelis.
Into the Gaza, to the northern part of the Gaza Strip, long time ago, Israel is making sure that the Palestinian population is kept out of harm's way all the time and gets the food supplies that it needs all the time.
The allegation, though, in the documents filed by the ICC is that starvation is being used as a method of war, that including the denial of humanitarian relief supplies, and that's a big part of why he is seeking the warrants against your Prime Minister and your Defense Minister. So I know you say supplies are getting in, and you say there is no famine there, but they say they have documented evidence, videos, and witnesses of starvation happening inside Gaza as a result of Israeli policies.
So he can use that wherever he wants. It's false. As we speak today, an hour ago, Israeli Defense Forces just released information about 650 tons.
Haven't they said they're going to starve them? Well, they have, but only if Hamas surrenders, though. They're only threatening to starve the children as long as they surrender and completely arbitrarily disarm and give up. So really, that's not so bad when you think about it.
Of supplies, humanitarian supplies, sitting on the Palestinian side, waiting to be delivered to the Palestinians. That's an issue that's beyond Israel's control.
Israelis tell themselves all the time, they get upset when we take note of what they've said and done. Like, did anyone see the clip of like this IDF guy like riding around on a little children's like tricycle or little children's toy the other day? And then they want to accuse people of blood libel when you talk about this like obsession with killing children. And then they take videos of themselves going into this home. Who knows where the family that lived there is, whether they're alive or dead, whether the kids are alive or dead, and they're joking around, riding around in the little children's toy. But it's blood libel to talk about their obsession with children and killing children.
To the Gaza Strip, we've created more openings through the air, through the sea, and by land, through Ashdod port, from Jordan. So we have we've gone to enormous lengths to make sure that the Palestinian population stays out of harm's way. And why would we do that? Because we believe that at the end of the day, these will remain our neighbors. They are not the neighbors of the prosecutor. I'm sure that he will never even contemplate living in such a neighborhood. This is our neighborhood. And we want to make sure that we will be able to live with these populations side by side at some point in time. Right now, we have to retrieve 128 hostages still being held in tunnels underneath Gaza. There was a hostage deal on October 10th. We have to make sure that they stop shooting rockets and missiles into Israel, which they've been doing and continue to do all the time. And we have to remember that behind this is not just Hamas. We have the Hezbollah in the north. We're not talking about that. But they continue to shoot and destroy Israeli homes in the north. And Iran, of course, that is behind this whole scene with other proxies in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, and so on. So this is a very broad front that Israel is confronting. And what the prosecutor is trying to do is to tie Israel's hands behind its back while it's defending itself in what is the most important war we've been waging since our inception. I mean, just this atrocious attack by Hamas, as you know, the sheer number is unprecedented.
But the other number that has a lot of people alarmed, and which is what people like Karim Khan point to, is the number of casualties, civilian and combatant, inside Gaza. And I know when we've had these discussions in the past, there is rejection and disagreement of the numbers that come from the health ministry in there because Hamas controls those institutions. So it is perhaps an unreliable indicator of where things stand. But your prime minister was on a podcast on the 12th of May, and he says there's at least 30,000 people who have been killed in Gaza since the war started. 14,000 combatants, he says, 16,000
the Third Reich police
civilians.
put in the effort to burn the evidence and post it on TikTok. Like, that's the amazing thing, too. Like, you would think maybe you would try to have a little bit more discipline about this. Can we not, like, to say to your guys, like, can we not, like, document and brag about the war crimes? You don't even have to stop doing them. You don't have to stop doing the war crimes. Simply stop taking pictures of video of yourselves doing it and posting it on social media. And they're like, no, I think we're going to still continue to do that, actually. Okay.
16,000 civilians using the Israeli prime minister's number.
Here's the hard-hitting journalism. He's talking about the civilians. He's talking about the children. This is CBC's hard-hitting analysis in journalism. He's really raking him over the coals. You know what he's going to say? Hamas, October 7th, hostages. That's what he's going to say.
It's a staggering number when you think about it, and there may be more buried underneath the rubble.
There is no doubt.
So
and I know you say you've been careful as a military and taken precautions, but yet we still have a number that you and I both, as human beings, find pretty tough to stomach. So like, does that not feed into what we're seeing now with what Mr. Khan is doing and the criticism coming from
the journalist is worthless, just sitting there, let him say word salad instead of answering the question. This is this is the ambassador. This is his job, is to spin things, and he's never going to be accountable. He's never going to admit wrongdoing. He's never going to do anything. It's his whole job to take these questions and spin it and present their viewpoint. And that's what passes for, like, tough journalism. I'm going to bring him and really rake him over the coals and ask him these tough questions, and you just let this guy instantly say Hamas, October 7th, mass rapes, hostages, and it's just like, well, okay, well, I did my job. Look at our journalism, our state of journalism. It's just really, really great. We're really doing a great job over here, and everyone congratulates themselves for our commitment to living in this society of free press and these free exchanges of ideas.
Other countries.
What Mr. Khan is doing is trying to prevent Israel from being able to defend itself. If anybody cares about humanitarian issues, about lives, I would wonder how much this prosecutor would be involved in Sudan, where Palestinians, by the way, among others, were killed, or how much he was involved in other areas of parts of the world where thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands were killed. This is specifically against Israel. This is not a humanitarian issue in itself. I think that in his perspective, the numbers also don't matter if there would be 2 or 30,000. The numbers are horrific, and we spoke about that. Any casualty is horrific, again, because these people will remain our neighbors, and we don't want to kill them. But when we have this monster of a terrorist organization hiding behind civilians, killing thousands of Israelis, we have to defend ourselves. We cannot just wait for Mr. Khan to say, well, you know what, maybe we'll find another talk about it, or I don't know what. We have a situation that no other country in the world is facing. We're a small country. We have been able to establish peaceful relations with several Arab countries, with many more we will in the future, because we have very friendly relations. But behind the scenes, there is a terrorist organization supported by Iran, the Iranian regime, which wants to destroy Israel. And our neighbors realize that that's the case, and this is why they also understand that we are fighting against...
We're just a small country that's just backed by the United States of America and every major Western government, and we receive billions of dollars every single year and billions of dollars of military funding. We're just these small little guys. We're just these little small guys, and all we do is take billions of dollars worth of weapons and missiles and military equipment. We're just small, innocent little fellas.
Hamas and not against the Palestinian population.
But just on that, Ambassador, and look, Hamas is a designated terrorist organization.
Of course,
here in
of
Canada,
course, I agree.
Reviled around the world.
Of course, but believe me, I agree with you.
They stand accused to the crimes they committed on October 7th. But my read of it is that Israel is not being accused, and Mr. Khan isn't taking this action because of the way the IDF has killed members of Hamas. It's those civilians, right? And the equivalency that Mr. Khan says he's trying to draw is between the value of the life of a Palestinian non-combatant civilian and an Israeli civilian. That's an equivalency that some organization needs to stand up for them in this situation. How do you respond to that idea, that it's about those 16,000 non-combatants that your Prime Minister said have been killed as a result of this?
we said it from the beginning. Any casualty, and you've heard me say that time and again, and I can show you numerous examples why Israeli soldiers were killed, because we preferred to have another type of operation to directly hit the terrorists and not to carpet bomb an area or a location. Because we understand it is our responsibility to live and abide by international law and by Israeli law, which is very strong and robust. And whoever crosses that line is held accountable.
But I wonder, Ambassadors, as a final point, I mean, there's been a recalibration of the military's approach in Gaza by the IDF.
There's hours of footage of carpet bombing, sir.
You know, as President Biden and others have talked to Prime Minister Netanyahu and says we need to see some changes in how you're doing this. The way things are being done now maybe aren't the way things were being done in October and being done in November. When we saw Defense Minister Gallant say a full siege, nothing gets in. You know, and we saw an approach there on the 8th of October, him saying that Gaza will be shut down. He compared the Palestinians who live there, to animals. I mean, do you think we could have gotten to the point where this many civilians are dead without something?
Why did Israel burn and bury the hundreds of cars that Hamas blew up? I would love, honestly.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
No challenge on the 14,000 combatant number either, which is the exact same number of Palestinian men killed in Gaza. No, because we accept this framing of every single military-aged male automatically being retroactively, posthumously put in this like enemy combatant pile, exactly like what America did during the War on Terror. And Non, thanks for gifting a sub to Show Sheepy. But why did Israel burn and bury the hundreds of cars that Hamas blew up? I would love to see literally just one discussion in our media, whether it's CBC or whatever else. I would like to have one discussion where they talk about the mountain of evidence that there is on October 7th, Israel killed their own civilians. Not entirely, not 100% of the casualties, but a sizable number. How much is the number? Well, we don't know because there's not really an investigation. The closest thing we've gotten to an investigation is that Al Jazeera documentary. I would like to see one discussion of this. Literally just one, please. Let's have one discussion about this whole October 7th narrative, which has been used to justify all of this brutal violence. I would like to see one discussion about, maybe there's more to that story than maybe we initially let on. All the stuff about the mass rapes, you know, that has never been proven, which has been used, just repeated over and over again. All the stuff about like, oh, they tied people together and covered them with gasoline and burned them, for which there's no evidence or photography or any kind of actual evidence that happened. It's weird how you can say like they beheaded babies, they cut babies out of pregnant women, all this kind of stuff that gets disproven, and it gets shown to be lies. It gets shown to be total lies. And then we're supposed to then take these other horror stories and say, oh, but these ones are true, though. What is with that? If perhaps, and this is just me, maybe this is just too outrageous. Perhaps, though, if there were lies that were told on that day about those like horrific stories, perhaps other such stories are also lies and fabrications. Maybe one of our journalists could maybe look into that a little bit, you know? No, they were lying. Though of course that stuff was a lie, and it's weird that that's just been swept under the rug as well. By the way, all those total lies and fabrications, we don't really even talk about that anymore. Maybe if they lied about that, perhaps they're lying about other things as well. Maybe as a journalist, you can kind of look into that a little bit. Oh, income tax. Oh, this sounds really cool, actually. Want to offer promotion of the channel? That sounds really great because I've been trying to promote this channel and grow this channel and grow the audience. And I think what you're offering right now seems like a really good service. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my credit card info and I'm going to get that over to you right away. Not one video of the music festival. It's hard to talk about this because it feels like you start going down crank territory. But that's one thing on that October 7th documentary that Al Jazeera did. You see footage of these paragliders outside the festival, and then you see footage of the aftermath of the festival with a lot of corpses lying around, but there's nothing actually like in between that. And again, we talk about this. I don't want to sit here and say that nothing bad happened, that it's impossible that like Hamas or people carried out acts of violence against people. You know, I don't want to say that's like impossible, but I would like to know more information about exactly what happened and how many of these casualties that happened were the responsibility of Israel and how many were the responsibility of Hamas. And when you have this whole incident being used to justify mass murder of tens of thousands of people, I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to want to know actual information about who is responsible for what precisely. And again, multiple lies have been told about that have been exposed, and we're still letting the same people that were doing the lies continue to lie about it and not questioning whether they're lies. Like, this is the fucked up thing about our whole journalistic
you can count on me
enterprise here.
Good old Rob
when someone
to,
repeatedly lies over and over.
This is not a cult. All hail Father Rob.
Comradeski, thanks for the 9 months. It's a stream, baby. And no, it's not a cult. Thank you. But that's our journalism. That's our journalistic institutions. You talk to someone who repeatedly lies over and over and over and over again, and then when they tell you another lie, you're just like, oh, well, this is probably true. Let's treat this as the truth until it can be absolutely proven otherwise. And then, of course, let's not mention that, and let's just keep talking to the same people. Like, the same people are talking about this, the mass rapes that happened, and just assuming that now it's just repeating it over and over and over again. That this campaign of mass rapes took place. But the same people, strangely, lied about babies being beheaded. They lied about a bunch of other things, but we're supposed to take that seriously, despite the lack of actual evidence that took place. And we looked at Sheryl Sandberg's video about her documentary about this, and there's nothing in this whole slickly produced documentary about sexual violence on October 7th. Absolutely nothing. There's an interview with that random dipshit who's obviously a massive liar, talking about how he was going John Woo on all the Hamas guys on October 7th, and then discovered he was like the Forrest Gump of October 7th, looking at all these horrible scenes, killing Hamas guys with his bare hands, and then stumbles on this like almost ritualistic mass rape scene, which after it's over, he goes and destroys all the evidence because like it's just too upsetting and no one should see it. That's the evidence. That's the evidence that they have. It's fucking insane. Biden couldn't care less about the truth. He just wants talking points that fit his position. I think Biden isn't like ideologically though. He's all the way in though. It's not even that he's lying. Biden doesn't think he's lying. He doesn't even know what's going on. I'm sure he thinks that he does saw pictures of the beheaded babies and the people being burned alive and stuff like that. I'm sure he does think that in his dying mind. This 1,000-year-old man. His dying, empty head. You know, he does believe it. Anyway, you'd think if we were interested in doing journalism, maybe we would ask some of these questions about this event that has been used as the justification for all of this. Like, I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but it's like, if people want to call me like a crank or a conspiracy theorist, or I'm denying atrocities, or I'm denying whatever, like, it is fucking insane that there's multiple stories that have been proven to be lies from that day, but we're supposed to take all the other things for which there's not proof. We're supposed to take that as being, we have to just believe this. Why? Why do you have to believe something when a known liar says it to you. I think your takeaway should be to disbelieve someone when you know for a fact that they've repeatedly lied to you over and over and over again. I think you should not believe them when they say, oh, but this really happened though. I know some of that stuff didn't happen, but this stuff did happen. Why do we have to believe that? And if you ask any of these questions, you're a rape apologist, you're an anti-Semite, you're doing blood libel, whatever it is. It's insane. This is the upside down world. This is the total alternate reality that these folks are demanding that we live in, despite all the evidence that shows that it's completely backwards and made up.
Of war.
I think that when you want to understand what the law of armed conflict means,
you're a liar. You're a Weasley fucking liar, dude.
Civilians may get killed. It's an option. It's a possibility. We try, and everybody should try, according to the law, do its best to prevent that. But that's a possibility. That's an option. And I don't think that if you're talking about a ratio, have a look at other conflicts around the world. I think that the ratio is very different. It's completely upside down than what has happened with Israel and Hamas and the Palestinians in Gaza. We have proof to show how meticulous we've gone about fighting Hamas. Although they are hiding behind civilians, they are not wearing uniforms, they are abusing locations of hospitals, mosques, schools. You've shown those images yourself. You know that they are holding their own population hostage. And so, in spite of that, we have to pursue this war because we have to get our 128 hostages back. They're still held by Hamas. And we know that quite a number of them are not alive anymore, but we will do our whatever it takes to make sure that they come back home. This is the responsibility of the Israeli government, and this is what we'll do.
Ambassador Ido Moed, difficult topics. Always appreciate your willingness to come in.
I don't know what the yellow ribbon is. Can someone explain? So that's CBC. That's our hard-hitting journalism, asking all the tough questions to the Israeli ambassador, really holding his feet to the fire there. Can you believe that? Wow. That's how our whole scam of our independent media operates. It allows people to think that there's some tough journalistic institutions in place to ask these kinds of questions, and we can congratulate ourselves. The yellow ribbon is for the hostages. Okay, the hostages that we've repeatedly killed. Okay, so we looked at the Western version of this. Now let's look at a more what I'm sure will be a more balanced version at Al Jazeera, which is maybe going to include some more statements beyond just simply Western leaders. The ambassador's father was born in Dublin and fought in the Haganah. His brain had no chance of being normal. What a cursed combination of backgrounds. You mean Al-Hamas? I saw those sniper videos too. Those are crazy. That could maybe be a little palate cleanser. That could be a little palate cleanser. I hear your arguments and I counter with this. You don't want, and like these videos are so effective, honestly. Like imagine being in the IDF and seeing these videos, how fucking terrified you'd have to be to go to set foot in Rafah or wherever else. I don't want to be a triangle. I don't want to get triangled. Oof.
Allah Akbar. Allah Akbar.
This guy's buddies just run away. Kind of going back and forth on whether I should have shown that, but it's, I don't know, those videos, it's a news, it's journalism, it's not violent, it's not gory. I mean, when you compare an army that primarily targets children to that, you know, ask yourself which one is doing crimes and which one is actually like engaging in a armed struggle. There's 3 war crimes away from retirement. Oh, God. Okay, let's watch this Al Jazeera.
Starving children is a crime. Killing civilians is a war crime. And willfully causing suffering is also a criminal act. Those are the top 3 reasons the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has cited for requesting arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant.
I have reasonable grounds to believe, on the basis of evidence collected and examined by my office, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant bear criminal responsibility for the following international crimes committed on the territory of the State of Palestine.
Several Israeli ministers have denounced the allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity. The Foreign Minister, Israel Katz, says it's a historic disgrace and that a special war room has been set up to counteract the decision. But not everyone agrees.
Israel will again protect itself with this wall of the whole world is anti-Semite and the whole world is against us, and it will unite again the Israelis in a very nationalistic, even more nationalist wave, and everyone will feel so just and such a victim by this evil decision. I think it's a just decision.
The ICC prosecutor is also seeking arrest warrants for Hamas political and military leaders Ismail Haniyeh, Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Deif.
There are reasonable grounds to believe that these 3 Hamas leaders are criminally responsible for the killing of Israeli civilians in attacks perpetrated by Hamas and other armed groups on the 7th of October 2023.
The Palestinian group says the arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant are several months too late. And rather than equating the victim with the perpetrator, ICC should order the arrest of all occupation officials who gave...
With full support of all the Republicans that were told are the bad guys that you got to make sure don't ever have power.
...orders and the soldiers who carried out the crimes.
If we want to be honest, we should be looking at what it is that the government, the Israeli government, has been doing, the orders that it has issued to its soldiers, and it's issued orders to its soldiers to carry out a genocide. If this court is to have any credibility, it should be going after the people who are committing genocide, rather than just simply trying to play this game of both sidesism.
For months, the ICC prosecutor faced criticism as the carnage in Gaza unfolded. Karim Khan's critics, even at the UN Security Council, criticized what they saw as his inaction to hold Israel accountable.
Ceasefire. Ceasefire.
Israel's allies, including the United States, also expressed anger ahead of Monday's ICC announcement. Target Israel and we will target you, said a warning letter from a dozen US Republican senators. They threatened to cut funding and sanction ICC staff and their families. This is Gaza today. And the mere talk of arrest warrants is unlikely to have an immediate impact on the war which has killed more than 35,000 Palestinians and displaced millions more since October. Osama bin Javed, Al Jazeera.
Well, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has responded to the news from the International Criminal Court in a pre-recorded address.
These are lies in The Hague. Israel's victory is not a lie. These are lies against...
Well, Kate Shuey, like, I don't, losing your minds, I hear what you're saying, but, like, I think it's, like, our political leaders are like, you can't make an equivalence between Hamas and Israel, and I think most people agree that, like, there shouldn't be an equivalence, and the ICC is suggesting that there is an equivalence with this effort to, like, go after both sides. And this equivalence totally obscures this vast power dynamic between the two sides. It totally obscures the fact that you have one side that's an occupying army that's armed and backed by, all the most powerful governments and economies and militaries in the world versus a people that are struggling against occupation, which they actually have the right under international law to do. That said, though, I think I don't want to frame it as being some kind of like, it not being something that should be supported, because just look at the way that they're freaking out. I think it's a good thing overall. But yeah, I do think it creates a false equivalence that shouldn't really exist. But you're right, though. I think that's what I've been saying as well. I think watching the reaction from Hamas versus Israel and their supporters, Hamas saying, okay, let's have an investigation, versus Israel saying the ICC are Nazis, basically. Which I think tells us something really interesting about the two sides to this conflict.
Against the Prime Minister and the Secretary of Defense. These are lies against the State of Israel. This is against the people who are fighting with heroism against Hamas, who attacked us. The ICC Chief Prosecutor, how can he compare our brave military with Hamas? Hamas who have killed and massacred us. As a Prime Minister of Israel, I refuse the comparison between the killers, Hamas, and us. This is the new anti-Semitism and how it manifests itself. It started at the universities and now it's at The Hague. People of Israel, we will never fail the Jewish people. They couldn't defend themselves 80 years ago. And I'd like to reiterate, no international entity can stand against us or prevent us from achieving our decisive victory.
Well, we have a team of correspondents around the world that are following all the latest developments on this story. We'll be getting reaction from Hind al-Qudri in central Gaza, Mohammed Jamjoom, who's in Amman, Jordan, with the Israeli reaction to the news, and internationally, we have Gabriel Elizondo standing by at the United Nations, and Pat Culhane is at the US State Department. But first, let's go to the ICC. Step Varson is there in The Hague for us. And Step, you heard the words from Benjamin Netanyahu pushing back fiercely against this move at the ICC. Probably comes as no great surprise that there would be strong criticism against this move by Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor there.
No, I don't think that came as a big surprise. I think this is all expected by the prosecutor Karim Khan here at the ICC. He has been treating this all very delicately. It took him a long time, months, to do this investigation. There was a lot of pressure from pro-Palestinian groups that he really needed to hold Israel accountable, but also on the other side from US Republican senators who wrote a letter threatening basically the ICC if they would go ahead with this case and issue arrest warrants, that there will be repercussions and sanctions. But Karim Khan made himself very clear this morning. He said nobody is above the law. Lives have also equal value, and there's also nobody can threaten this court, and that's something that he has said in the past.
Yeah, Jordan, I mean, this is something we've been talking about when it comes to October 7th. Like, that's something that gets totally left out of this discussion when we have in our media. And I think there's a lot of people that are like on the left that refuse to make this acknowledgement for whatever reason. I don't know why. It's like they're worried that they're going to get people to yell at them. They're going to lose access. They're going to be accused of whatever. I don't really understand the reason that no one seems to want to talk about the fact that the first targets on October 7th. I have people that I know and respect that have talked to me personally about this and talked about like this massacre, the October 7th massacre, and framing it like it was just an orgy of random violence against civilians and not a military operation. That the very first targets of this operation were IDF checkpoints and military bases outside this prison camp of Gaza, which is totally legitimate. That's a military operation, and the people that were part of that operation have the right to go after and militarily attack these soldiers at the checkpoints and military bases that are outside the prison camp where they live. Like, why can't we talk about that? I genuinely do not get it. And I somewhat understand October 8th and 9th and 10th and 11th when the propaganda button gets turned on and no one wants to be seen to be supporting the massacres of civilians or whatever horror story. I kind of get it. I know it's difficult. What I don't get, though, is 8 months later, with everything that we've seen, people are still saying this kind of thing and still just refusing to talk about the friendly fire, refusing to talk about the military objectives and aspects of this. I genuinely find it really strange. Again, even people that I like and respect. And I find it perplexing that we can't have a discussion about this now 8 months later.
As well, when this letter was sent to him in April, he also said you can't just simply threaten the International Criminal Court. And what we've seen also in 2020, it happened also that the US put sanctions on prosecutor of the ICC, his predecessors at the time, also for a case for war crimes in Afghanistan. So there has always been a lot of pressure, and I think they're very well aware here in The Hague that was coming, and of course they still decided to go ahead with it.
Yeah, and as you say, go ahead, they will. Talk us through the next steps, because we know that this is an application, the first step in what they hope will be the issuing of arrest warrants for these 5 individuals.
Exactly. These requests for 5 arrest warrants is now been sent to the pre-trial chamber. So the judges there will have to decide if the prosecutor has a valid argument to have these arrest warrants issued. They have to look at the jurisdiction of the court in this case, but also to the fact if these suspects then need to be in The Hague and that they need to be arrested because, for example, are these crimes still being committed as we speak. And that's exactly what Karim Khan said during his announcement. He said, what we're seeing at the moment in Gaza, it's still continuing, what he says, these war crimes and crimes against humanity. So we will expect a decision maybe in a few weeks. And then, of course, when they decide to issue the arrest warrants, then the 124 countries that have signed up to the Rome Statute have the obligation to arrest the suspect, the people who have been looked for, and been sent to The Hague to be detained here so the trial can continue. But these 124 countries don't include the United States, for example, and also don't include Israel, they don't include China, India, but many countries in Europe, for example, are included, and also in Africa, South America. So it will definitely limit the scope of traveling of these 5 individuals.
Yeah, and probably complicate relationships with Israel as well. Step Vassen, live at the ICC in The Hague. Many thanks for that. Let's cross to Mohammed Jamjoon now for more Israeli reaction. Just a reminder that Al Jazeera has been banned from Israel. That's why Mohammed is reporting for us from the Jordanian capital, Amman. Mohammed, clearly fierce reaction to developments at the ICC from Benjamin Netanyahu, accusing the court of anti-Semitism. How does this match with other opinions coming out of Israel?
My aunt invokes the Rome Statute to prevent Facebook from using her pictures of cats, and she's right to do so.
Yeah, that's right, Neve. I mean, what we've heard is not a surprise across the political spectrum. And we should remind our viewers, it is a deeply divided political spectrum in Israel. But across the political spectrum, you've had outrage expressed. You heard a bit from Prime Minister Netanyahu earlier in the show. Let me tell you more of what he had to say in that pre-recorded speech. He said, as the Prime Minister of Israel, I reject with disgust the comparison of the prosecutor in The Hague between democratic Israel and the mass murderers of Hamas. This is a complete distortion of reality. Beyond that, we also had Benny Gantz. He's a former defense minister and a member of the war cabinet. He put out a statement earlier in which he said, placing the leaders of a country who went into battle to protect its citizens in the same line with bloodthirsty terrorists is moral blindness and a violation of its duty and ability to protect its citizens. Then you have Yair Lapid. He's the head of the opposition in Israel. He put out a tweet earlier in the day in which he said, the ICC arrest warrants are a complete moral failure. We cannot accept the outrageous comparison between Netanyahu and Sinwar, between the leaders of Israel and the leaders of Hamas. And finally, we also had a statement put out by Israeli President Isaac Herzog in which he said, among other things, the announcement of the prosecutor at the ICC is beyond outrageous and shows the extent to which the international judicial system is...
We just got to get rid of this Netanyahu guy, and then Israel's going to go back to being the progressive, queer-friendly, liberal democracy in the Middle East. Bloodthirsty terrorists. I heard they killed 40,000 civilians and flattened an entire city.
Danger of collapsing. We expect all leaders in the free world to condemn outright this step and firmly reject it. So basically, despite whatever political affiliation somebody may have, the political leaders speaking out in Israel right now are all united in their outrage against this decision for Karim Khan to seek these arrest warrants. And I should mention also, we're seeing in the Israeli press unnamed Israeli officials using words like hypocrisy, distortion of reality, embarrassment to describe what has happened today. Niamh?
So, Mohammed, very interesting point. So, in a way, what is playing out at the ICC goes some way in unifying what previously has been a very divided political landscape. I wonder then what the impact will be on perceptions regarding Israel's operations in Gaza, whether there'll be more unity regarding that now.
This is going to be very interesting to see how it plays out, because on the one hand, you have Israel rejecting this, as they have rejected numerous times that they have been called on the carpet by international institutions. Let's not forget how many times there have been UN security resolutions, binding ones, that Israel has completely disregarded and said that the UN is a body that is anti-Israel. Now you have pressure being applied on Israel by the ICC. But also, it's interesting because on a day when you had a top U.S. official, national...
Yeah, George Smiley, that's a whole other thing. And like, Bibi deserves the charges they're putting on Hamas. Like, whatever all the stuff about, like, oh, did they let it happen, similar to the whole, like, 9/11 argument. It's the same thing. Like, when you have a situation of a colonizer, an occupier, and an occupied people, a colonized people, and the colonized people engage in acts of violence, the blame for that should go to the colonizer, right? Regardless of, like, oh, they knew it was happening and they let it happen for whatever geopolitical reason. That's the reality. When you have an occupied, colonized group and they break out of the concentration camp that they're trapped in and they commit acts of violence, the fault for that should go to the people that put them in the concentration camp in the first place. The colonizer, the occupier, the genocider, the ethnic cleanser. It's their responsibility. They created this situation. They created the conditions for that kind of thing to happen. Their fault. I want to return to using this emoji for bonk-worthy content instead of the actual temp outside. That's been my only understanding of that emoji, was the bonk-worthy content. For me. I don't think you need to even go into all these moral rules we all agree on in this stream. You can dumb it down to who shot first, and it wasn't Hamas. Well, exactly. That's the whole, like, history didn't start on October 7th argument. But I just try to, like, make these arguments because you never know who's watching. You know, we've got the regular community and the people that we all are all kind of in agreement about this. But then you might have people that might tune in, that might have come from a raid or come from the algorithm or random lurkers. I know you lurkers are out there. I know there's lurkers watching this. So I think it's important sometimes. So if people do get this perspective that they hear these arguments, because no one on our media is having these arguments. No one's saying this shit on our media because for some reason, you're just like not allowed. King of William. There you go. I knew you were lurking. King of William.
Security advisor Jake Sullivan, who had been in Israel the past 2 days, first speaking with Netanyahu and then speaking with Yoav Gallant, the defense minister. He was told by both these men, according to Israeli media, that despite the fact that the U.S. has continued to ask Israel not to push into Rafah, to limit their operation there, that Israel is going to expand its operation in Rafah. So, yes, there is pressure on Israel right now. It will be interesting to see what happens going forward. It will be interesting to see if this will motivate more protesters to come out into the streets, anti-government protesters, relatives of captives being held in Gaza. But for the moment, it seems that Israel is basically saying, we're not going to take any pressure from the ICC, and we're not even going to adhere to the urgings of our top ally, the United States.
All right, Mohammed, many thanks for that. Mohammed Jamjoon reporting from Amman, of course, after Al Jazeera was banned from reporting from Israel itself. Right, let's cross the US State Department in Washington, D.C. and Patty Colhane to look at the US reaction in more detail because, Patty, the US President has weighed in.
He's weighed in. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken's weighed in. We've just been hearing from Mark Miller here at the State Department. He's the State Department spokesman. The briefing's ongoing, but you knew the U.S. was going to react with force, but they're coming out with very strong criticism. Just to sum up what Matt Miller is basically saying on this, he said it is fully unfounded and should never have been brought. They have a couple of complaints. They say that the International Criminal Court, the ICC, doesn't have jurisdiction because Palestine is not officially a state. It doesn't mention the steps the U.S. has taken to make sure Palestine is not viewed as a state, for example, at the United Nations Security Council. Then he goes on to say other countries that the ICC has investigated, they've let them conduct their own investigation first. They didn't do that with Israel, so they have a problem with the process. They said the court should only take up cases when the countries are not investigating themselves. And according to Miller, he said Israel is, in fact, investigating several different cases
and it turned out they weren't doing any more crimes.
Potential
So what's the
crimes
problem?
committed by members of the Israeli Defense Forces. He didn't seem to be able to make sense of the fact that the ICC is looking at the leadership, but Israel's looking at rank and file soldiers. So again, seemed to be a bit of a disconnect there. He also, they're arguing it could hurt ceasefire negotiations.
Crackety crack, and thanks for another gifted sub. Very much appreciated.
Because they feel that this will embolden Hamas. And then he was asked repeatedly, okay, so where are Palestinians supposed to go? Where can they go seek justice? And his answer, I think, surprised some of the journalists in the room. He said, well, they should look to Israel to investigate itself.
That's where Palestinians,
so
that's where they should complain about the war
sums
crimes.
Up the reaction
they should go
from the
complain
Biden
to the people doing the
administration.
crimes.
They are outraged, but again, not much they can do about it.
What are these, instead of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, the people that lived in, the Jews that lived in the Warsaw Ghetto should have just complained to the Germans about their treatment, and they could have investigated it and looked into it. What's the problem? This is just the most insane argument.
Patty, just to put this all in perspective, of course, the US and Israel, neither of them are signatories of the ICC. They didn't sign the Rome Statute that set up the International Criminal Court. However, it's the first time the ICC has targeted a leader this close to the United States and almost preempting this possible move by Karim Khan. Some American Republican lawmakers have been threatening sanctions against the courts. I mean, what more can you tell us about that? How realistic a threat is this?
Well, they're reportedly even having meetings with the court to say, look, we are really going to be unhappy if you do this. There'll be consequences. So, yes, they are talking about a bill in the House that would look to sanction the court members, the prosecutors, their families. Not quite sure that that's going to have a huge deterrent effect unless they've got these public servants have billions of dollars in U.S. banking system, because really that's about the extent. They can freeze their money that's in the U.S. They could bar them entry into the U.S. Whether that's going to really be as much of a deterrent as the U.S. seems to think, we'll have to wait and see. So they could do that. They can't necessarily say we're not going to fund the ICC, we're not going to recognize the ICC, because the U.S. already doesn't fund the ICC. There was some movement to try and get some funding to the ICC because it was investigating Russia and Vladimir Putin.
Some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Benny, thank you very much for the raid. I really appreciate it, Benny. How was the stream today? Welcome, Raiders. Bring it in. It's me, Rob. It's nice to see you. It's nice to have you. How's it going? We're just talking about Israel and the ICC and getting real mad. You're gaming. We're watching the news and getting real mad. I'm getting real worked up. And earlier, people hung out with my chair for a good 10, 15 minutes. In retrospect, I'm not really sure what that was all about.
Doesn't really have a lot of leverage here, but you could expect, especially Republican members of the House, they're going to push forth a bill once, if in fact these warrants are issued. Will it take it up and will it pass the Senate? That is a much closer question, because there are several Democrats in the House and the Senate that have grown very weary of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the way he is conducting this war. So might not even get through the Senate. It'd likely get through the House, but the Senate's going to be a tougher try.
All right. Many thanks for explaining all of that. Pascal Hain at the State Department in Washington. Well, Hamas, in turn, released a statement saying arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant are 7 months too late. It went on to condemn the prosecutors, saying that seeking arrest warrants against Hamas equates the victim with the perpetrator, and says the ICC should order the arrest of all occupation officials who gave orders and soldiers who carried out the crimes. Well, meanwhile, on the ground in Gaza, Israeli attacks have killed at least 106 Palestinians. That's since Sunday. Another 176 people have been injured. Dozens have been killed in the north of the Strip. Israeli forces have targeted a residential square in Beit Lahia. Many of the victims were women and children. And many of the injured were taken to the nearby Kamal Adwan hospital. These are the scenes at that specific hospital, as you can see, completely overwhelmed. At least 7 people have died in the hospital from their injuries. And another strike hit Al-Shaut refugee camp in Rafah in the south. Reports say residential houses were empty as people had fled during previous strikes. They've now been reduced to rubble. All right, let's get the international reaction to today's developments from the ICC. Al Jazeera's Gabriel Elizondo joins us live from the UN. Gabe, just to clarify, the ICC is not connected or affiliated with the United Nations, but it is nevertheless a hugely important court, and whatever ruling results from any kind of legal proceedings there will be watched closely by UN officials where you are.
Yeah, that's right. It's important to remind our viewers that the ICC, the International Criminal Court, what we've been discussing now, is not an official body or an official court of the UN, not affiliated in any way. Now, the UN works and collaborates with the ICC when necessary, but it's a totally separate entity. And that's why the UN is not really commenting, per se, about the decision by Karim Khan. Now, the ICJ, of course, International Court of Justice, that is the highest court of the United Nations, also based at The Hague as well. And we oftentimes don't hear the Secretary General comment about ICJ decisions either, so it's not particularly unusual. Putting that aside, I will say that a very few diplomats here at UN headquarters on Monday are wanting to comment about Karim Khan's decision from the ICC. There was a Security Council meeting this morning about Ukraine, totally unrelated to the events of the ICC. We were outside the Security Council chambers as diplomats were going in for the meeting, asked multiple diplomats for their response, and they simply would either say no comment or ignore our questions. This is, as one person said, a real hot
Didn't
potato.
the US create the ICC so we could have a court to control more? The ICC exists, according to like the United States, to go after African leaders that they don't like, or maybe Putin. That's what it exists for. And when it tries to move beyond that kind of mandate, it's illegitimate.
A very complicated position now that many countries are in moving forward on this. However, we did hear from one ambassador, that was Vanessa Fraser, the Malta's ambassador to the UN. They are a member of the Security Council right now. She said that her country supports Karim Khan and the ICC and just wants the process to move forward. Listen to a little bit more of what she had to say.
We support the judicial institutions of the United Nations, and we believe very much in their impartiality and their independence, and they should be allowed to carry out their work independently without any threats, and let the process go forward. Those who need to defend themselves will defend themselves in court. It's quite simple. It's not, for us, it's not about who is indicted. It really is about the independence of the courts.
Now, it was just March of 2023, last year, that the ICC issued arrest warrants for Vladimir Putin for alleged crimes relating to the deportation of Ukrainian children after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now, back then, many Western countries here at the UN, particularly...
And whenever we talk about this, I never want to go full Putin apologist, full Russian chauvinist. Plenty of things about Putin and the Russian government that I don't agree with, that I don't like. Isn't this deportation of children and the way that that's been framed as this like war crime that the ICC investigate, wasn't that to remove children from a war zone though? Like, wasn't that... Like, you have in Gaza the mass murder of children versus this deportation of children in this case. It just, that equivalence seems to me to be really kind of strange. The deportation of children from a war zone versus the mass murder of children, which is what Netanyahu and his allies have been responsible for. Yeah, you're not supposed to evacuate children, you're supposed to bomb them. Like, even if you want to talk about that being some kind of form of like crime or kidnapping or destruction of Ukrainian values or society or whatever, like we can have that conversation, certainly. But there is a vast, vast difference between deporting children from a war zone versus waging a war against children, which is what Israel is doing. I don't know. It'll have to depend on what happened to those kids they sent away. And again, I don't want to whitewash terrible things that Russia has done. Although we've talked about, Ukraine and who's responsible for that, who fired the first shot there. I mean, that's a whole other subject that we've talked a lot about, which I think we all reject the sort of the Western narrative of the version of events. Anyway.
The United States rushed to the cameras to support that decision by the ICC. Now, when it becomes a decision that's against Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel, clearly they're singing a different tune, people avoiding the cameras, so to speak. So that's where you're seeing countries like Russia clearly calling out the U.S. and others for what they say is a clear double standard.
Obviously, it's a double standard.
Gabriel Elizondo at the UN, thank you.
Obviously, it's a double standard. Canada didn't even mention this until it took about like 12 hours for even Canada to even mention this. What happens after that with the children is, in my opinion, another matter. If culture and language is stripped, it's leaning to cultural genocide. Yeah, and again, I don't want to whitewash any of that. I don't want to whitewash that, but I do think if that is the case, there's still a massive distinction between waging a war on children and deporting children from a war zone. Even if that might be a crime in and of itself. there's still a huge difference between these two acts. I had to wait for orders from the U.S. That's right. Yeah, we had to wait for the talking points to come in. Much less clear who fired first in the case of Ukraine, a nation territory terrorized by every empire that's ever ruled in Moscow. I don't know if I would agree with that. I don't think Ukraine was terrorized when it was part of the Soviet Union, when it was Russia's top ally in the Soviet Union. You know, millions of Ukrainians were proud Soviet citizens. Millions of Ukrainians fought in the Red Army to defend Europe from fascism and the entire world very bravely and heroically. You know, when feudalism was abolished, living standards in Ukraine rose drastically from what they were previously. I think some Ukrainians were probably terrorized, yes, but it's a question of who. And there's also class issues at play there as well. That also makes a lot of presumptions. Obviously, Gray Zone reported on those kids originally, and it seemed as though the circumstances were in good faith. Obviously, that's not comprehensive evidence, but yeah. And again, I don't want to whitewash like really legitimate issues or crimes. But I think even if you want to take the least charitable view of that whole issue, which is that they're kidnapping children and stripping away their language and culture, okay, then that is a crime. But in the scale of criminality, where do you place that versus waging a war on children and murdering over 15,000 children? Well, I think one of these is like significantly a worse crime than the other. Not to say that it's not a crime. I got to do a little call to action here, folks. This has been yet another great episode and a great day of discussion. I would just like to briefly remind folks that if you do enjoy this program and you like tuning in and being part of the community and you like to chat or be involved in the show and you like to tune in, the only way that this show is able to exist, the only way I'm able to do this show each and every day is through the amazing generosity of the TRRS community members. So if you can, if possible, please subscribe to the show. I'm halfway to the sub goal for today. So if you can, please subscribe or gift subs or bits or tips or whatever it is. Every little bit helps a lot. This is my main job, basically, doing this show. It's my main source of income. I love doing this show. I'm happy to do it each and every day, 3-4 hours a day. And just in exchange for taking the time to do that, I try to just make the little number at the bottom of the screen go up. That's just part of the economic reality of doing a show here on twitch.tv. So if possible, please subscribe.
We simply
it's really, really helpful.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Pork Tree, thanks for the 300 bits. Thank you, Pork Tree. Very cool. See, George, I don't want to keep pushing back on this, but you say, so pogroms conquering under the Tsar, claiming the nation as its own, and the Soviets were nasty AF to them too. But like, in what way though? This is the thing that I'm kind of curious about. Not to say that things were perfect, you know? Not to say that things were perfect. But like I said though, when feudalism was abolished in Ukraine, living standards for most people, especially the people that had the least, were raised drastically. And people were given access to education, healthcare, all kinds of like social benefits. Again, there was millions of Ukrainians that were proud to be part of that were proud Soviet citizens. So a little bit more skeptical about these claims about Ukrainians being terrorized during that era. Anyway, folks, if you enjoy this kind of like tanky, authoritarian, red fash campism that I like to engage in on here, if you enjoy that, please support the show if you can. Again, halfway to the sub goal. Halfway there. I really am trying to hit the targets and the sub goals each and every day. I hope you'll indulge me. I will hope you will indulge me while I try to engage in this call to action. Halfway to the sub goal. Please support my tanky, authoritarian red fash campism. If you can. Look at this. It's nice to like run my fingers through it. It's satisfying. Yep. So I'm just gonna have to I'm gonna have to try and hold off here. So far the call to action, mostly unsuccessful. Halfway to the sub goal. If you can, please subscribe or give subs. Every little bit helps. You can join the base level of the friendship triangle system. Twitch's only two-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and
you can count
trickle-down
on me.
clout
good old
tiered
Rob
reward
to,
system.
Talk you through all this.
Crackle Bear, thank you for another gifted sub. Thank you for the support today. I really appreciate it. In terms of our monthly leaders, we got Riskinverse leading the way in terms of subs, gifted subs this month. Riskinverse. We got Talks to Wall. Talks to Wall, who just showed up, gifted 20 subs today, 20 subs one day, and then just dipped, which is an extreme power move. We got Talks to Wall in number 2 position, and we've got Comrade Bushy, number 3. And now a mere 16 subs to go to get to the goal. So if possible, folks, please do subscribe. I'm sorry for the call to action. I'm sorry to subject you to this. Once again, I would like to get be like part of the media and get a salary and benefits and that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, that's not an option for me because I say things that are very unpopular and that our media establishment, especially in Canada, as we've learned, is not interested in hearing about. So this is what I have. This is my option. And I'm proud to be able to do this show on twitch.tv, to have these conversations, these much needed conversations and this analysis. But the only way that I can do that is if the little number at the bottom of the screen goes up. 16 subs to go. Just a few brave heroes could drag my tired ass across the finish line for today. How many subs are needed for the chair to sing a song? The chair is not going to sing a song, but as I've repeatedly said, I do have a song planned to sing for the next time I get to 50 subs, whenever that is, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, next month, whenever that day comes. I do have a song in mind that I'm planning to sing. It's an insanely hard song to sing too, and it's probably not a good idea. It's probably not a good idea for me to do it, but I'm going to do it anyways. Prez Bedard, if I was working and making good money, I would clean up the subs required to make the number go up. And I appreciate the sentiment. And believe me, I do understand, that people are limited, that not everyone can contribute, that not everyone can do that. Completely understand, completely get it. And I hope you'll understand from my perspective that I do have to take just like a few minutes every day to try and just will this number to go up. To try to just use my methods of persuasion to try to make this little number at the bottom of the screen go up, because that's my entire purpose in life, is to make this little number go up each and every day of my life. I hope you understand, folks. Believe me, I get it if it's not possible. I hope you understand my perspective on this, because I do actually hate doing this shit. Do I need to do the chair thing? Is that it? I can try that. If people really would rather subscribe to the chair, I can do that. The handsome looks is a method to... Oh, up the red. Stop it. Stop it. Make me blush. All right, fine.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Even the possibility of the chair was so exciting for Ben that Ben Bang Boom gifted 5 subs. Ben, thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs. Very, very cool, and I really appreciate it. You're anti-chair, okay. Well, now I don't want to leave to put the chair if Ben just gifted 5 subs and now says he's anti-chair. I'm getting all kinds of mixed signals here. Now the only way I'm able going to be to do it again and to leave you with the chair is if if a pro chair person gives subs as well, because now I can't disrespect Ben Bang Boom like that. What about this? How's this for? Does bring in some subs?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Anon, for the gifted sub. Someone appreciates my thighs. At least someone appreciates my thighs. Look at that. Elusive poo-poo sama. Wow. This is exciting. Very exciting. That's alright, Joe. I get it. But it is true. We're 10 subs away from the goal. 10 subs away from the goal. One extremely brave hero could trigger the ultra cool and elite 10 sub alert and get the show to the sub goal for today. It's just one brave hero.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
This sub is for Chair. For too long, Chair has supported this stream without proper recognition. Chair carries the entire weight of the stream on its back, all on its own.
Wow. Wow. Irate Lump, thank you very much for the 41 months tier 1. That's so many months. That is so many months. Unbelievable. Thank you, Irate Lump. I really appreciate it. Only 9 subs away Okay, I'm gonna throw a little bone to Team Chair now. Okay, if that's what people want, I guess so. All right, 9 subs to go. Maybe if I can't get it done, perhaps the Chair can. I'll be back in a few.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
The chair in the sky is red. The chair in my heart is Mao Zedong.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
From the legs to the seat, Rob's chair will be freed.
Hello? Oh, am I interrupting? Am I interrupting something? Oh, excuse me. So sorry. Red Wizard, thanks very much for 2 gifted subs. Very cool. Thank you, Red Wizard. I appreciate it a lot. Or Chair appreciates it. Bleep Lord, thanks for the 200 bits as well. And Joe, thanks for the 200 bits. Really mixed reactions to this. Some people are reacting with disappointment to my reappearance, and Red Wizard is in the fuck chair camp. So look, the most generous sub gifters right now are in the anti-chair camp. Red Wizard is doing anti-chair slurs. Well, the meat bag's back. True.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Did you read the message? From the legs to the seat, Rob's chair will be freed. Jesus. Jesus. And Anon, thank you for a gifted sub. Thank you, Anon. I appreciate it a lot. And we're only 6 subs away from the goal. Only 6 subs away from the goal, folks. I don't want to alarm anybody. I don't want to alarm anybody, but we're only 6 measly subs away from the goal. Anti-Rob Middick, exactly. It makes me feel very unsafe. Chair supporters only donating anonymously because of anti-chair sentiment, as well as new international chair court warrants. The chair supporters, they're afraid to show their faces. They're afraid to show their faces in this community because they don't want to be ostracized and mocked. Did anyone see this? This is a funny article. Here's the really scary thing that's happening in the United States right now. Congratulations, you made the ultimate Frisbee team. Now what's your stance on Zionism? My new story. On campus, a new social litmus test. Zionist or not. That's the scariest thing of all. The fact that there's like college kids and even high school kids that are now deciding that if someone supports the horrific mass murder that we've been watching over the last 8 months, that they don't want to be friends with them. No, you have to be. You have to be. It's racist to not be friends with people. You have to be friends with them. Yeah, there's a litmus test, and if you support Israel and you support ethnic cleansing and mass murder, it's mean. It's mean. It's bullying. Exactly. For you not to be friends with them. Barfcast, I really appreciate the sentiment, and I know for a fact that Barfcast, who's an incredibly generous supporter of this community and this show, I am 100% positive that someone will gift our friend Barfcast a sub. I absolutely know that they will be doing this. There's not a doubt in my mind. There's not a doubt in my mind that someone is going to gift Barfcast a sub so Barfcast can use all of the wonderful emotes and tiny little images.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Bonbon, thanks for gifting a sub to our friend Barfcast. I knew it. I knew it. I knew one of these beautiful people would come through. And thank you again, Barfcast, for all the support over the years. Honestly, it's been much appreciated. And thanks again to Bonbon as well. Yeah, I just find this article really funny too. It's like this is the big crisis. Yeah, there's actually a moral litmus test where you don't want people that support the mass murder of little kids to be friends with you. Boo-hoo. Don't fucking care. No one cares. Why can't you just bury the hatchet and be friends with the genocide booster? Exactly. No, it's anti-Semitic to not be friends with the supporters of Israel. You have to be friends with an open neo-Nazi or you're racist towards white people. Exactly. Now here's the final question, folks. Here's the final question. We're 5 subs away. Is there a final brave hero, a heroic individual that wants to step up and support this program and help get to the sub goal? Just one brave and generous hero could do it. Final countdown. Reminds me of the Parenti line. The day after the revolution, the liberals will be more concerned with the rights of the fascists. Will there be civil liberties for the fascists? Are they going to keep their radio programs and their newspapers and their farms? It do be like that. Well, folks. Well, folks, thank you for tuning in today. I appreciate it a lot. I appreciate it a lot, folks. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tuning into this program. There is still time. Just so that's clear. There is still time for one brave hero to come along and get this show to the sub goal. Or, I mean, one extremely brave hero could, in theory, get to the extended karaoke sub goal. But you wouldn't be interested in that, though. You wouldn't be interested in that. I should start doing that, like, Wolf of Wall Street, like, boiler room method. You're probably not brave enough. This is more for the heavy hitters, and obviously you need to get permission from your wife or husband or partner, whoever it is. You need to get permission. And this is more for like heavy hitters, like people that are like independent, you know, people that are brave, that are able to capable of making these kind of bold decisions. This is not for you. This is not for you if that's too much, you know. Obviously you want to go and call the bank and say, "Oh, can I please do this?" Like, no, this is not really for you, obviously, if that's your take. I thought the video said we shouldn't trust people in our lives who are against it. Well, that's obviously once you're in the community, that's the next level. That's like the level 3. That's when you get in there, you get into the community, then you get to the level 3, and that's when you start ostracizing your friends and family members. More of a Shelbyville idea. Yeah, that's right. That's right. But you know, folks, you know what? We're going to go ahead and raid Sean vids now. And here's the thing. I know that those 5 subs are going to come in. I'm fully confident. You know how confident I am that those 5 subs are going to come in the next 40 seconds or so? 100% confident. I'm 100% confident that those final 5 subs are going to come in the next 30 seconds. I've never been more certain of anything in my entire life. And I know I don't even have to say anything. I'm just going to silently sit here for the next 20 seconds, and I'm just going to wait for those subs to roll in.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
100 Confo.
Thank you, Anus Beard, for the 200 bits. Any second now. I know they're going to come in.